Get ready to celebrate God's call to go. Here's your weekly dose of heartwarming encouragement for the missionary in all of us. Welcome to Missions Change My Life. Now here's your host, Pastor Kevin.
Good morning. I'm Pastor Kevin, founder and executive director of Global Hope India, and your host for Missions Change My Life podcast. This is a poor kid from rural North Carolina that has now flown over 1 million miles to 27 different countries. I've taken nearly 1,000 people on mission trips to India. We've collected millions for God's work among Indian nationals. I will be sharing compelling stories of radical transformation from ordinary people. Buckle up. You're going to hear some amazing stories. I'm going to take you right inside 20 plus years of real life mission trip devotional moments. And we will be sharing practical tools to empower and equip you. Go to globalhopeindia.org/resources as God uses missions to change your life. Before we welcome today's very special guests, Jim and Mary, to the show, let me share with you some additional context why I was incredibly honored when they agreed to come on the show and tell their story. Jim and Mary have been married for 52 years. They reside in Rutherford County, North Carolina. Now, Jim is retired from Winn-Dixie as a meat manager, and Mary is retired from teaching at Rutherford County Elementary School. Jim is a beekeeper, garden keeper, and when Mary isn't bossing Jim around, she's an excellent cook. They have 2 children and 2 grandchildren. Jim and Mary are living proof that senior adults don't stop. They actually may even debate with you whether senior adults even slow down. We have videos of Mary dancing through the village in India with little children. Jim and Mary are involved in their local church. And actually, as a side note, Jim's sister and his mother used to show kindness to me and my siblings while we were growing up. One time, they even invited my younger brother over to their home for Sunday lunch. Jim and Mary have been to India 3 times with Global Hope India. Will you please join me in welcoming Jim and Mary to the Missions Change My Life podcast?
Thank you. We're glad to be here.
Thank you, Kevin, for this opportunity.
Yeah, thank you. I want our audience to get to know a little bit about Jim and Mary, but I also want to just go full circle for a moment because it is a high honor for me that in this work that God's called me to, focused on India, that there is now a connection with my hometown. And I am just incredibly blessed that when we went full-time and we put a board together, that your son, Chris, was one of the first members of the board and has served on the board of director for many years. And now his wife, Rebecca, is on the board. And you have gone to India several times. But I remember Chris talking to me about his family, his parents there in Rutherford, and I grew up in Rutherford. And we've got to meet Jim's sister, Linda. And we were talking about church. And we ended up going to the very same church for a while, Mount Lebanon Baptist Church, right outside of Sunshine, North Carolina. And I remember telling Aunt Linda, as a small boy, I remember that there was a family in the church that took my younger brother home sometimes after church, and they would feed him lunch and then bring him back to the house. And Linda spoke up and said, "That was my mother. That was me and my mom." And she remembered my younger brother and me and our family. I come from, unfortunately, a very broken, dysfunctional family, and childhood memories were not always pleasant, but I was so thankful that in this work of Global Hope India, there's a small connection there with this family that really loved on us as a child. And so when I introduce you to Jim and Mary Ayers, I'm introducing you to a family that sowed seeds of the gospel into me, into our family. And now to be able to take them over to India on a short-term mission trip is just really one of the highlights of my career. Jim and Mary, I love y'all so much. Thank you and your family for the investment of the gospel that you've had on me and my family. I'm about to take my younger sister, LaDonna, on a short-term mission trip to India. That will be a highlight as well. But even her and my younger brother, Jonathan, my older brother, Jerry, your family had a great impact in just loving us in some tough moments of our life. Thank you so much for that.
We're really glad to know you, and we appreciate all you do through Global Hope India and all the help you've given us while we've been on mission trips over there in India.
It's been a joy getting to know you and work with you and see what you're doing, and most of all, being able to go to India and see firsthand what's going on.
Yeah.
You don't know until you go.
So I'm glad that your son, Chris, and his wife, Rebecca, have gone with us. But then shortly after that, he said, my mom and dad are going to go. And how many times have you now been to India?
We have been 3 times.
Wow. So let's talk about each of those trips. What was the first trip to India like for you?
Well, the first trip to India was, we did more evangelistic services there, and then we worked with the children in the orphanages and things like that. And then our second trip was in Hyderabad.
Mm-hmm.
And there we did classes to the women. Some of the women, we just talked with them and on different subjects such as prayer and faith. I remember talking with them because then we had the children. We would go to the children's orphanage and we would play with them and work with them. And then we had the girls that had been rescued. And we would go to their building and we would talk with them. And at first they were so quiet with us. They just didn't want to talk much. And then we'd get to talking to them and laughing with them and things like that. And then before we left, they were fixing our hair. They were polishing our fingernails. And so, it was, Kevin was saying, come on, we got to go, we got to go. But yet we were so enthused with them, and they were enthused with us till it was hard to get us going.
Mm-hmm.
And then we went to
Mumbai.
Mm-hmm. And we were there, and we worked with the orphanage, and we also worked in an outside place where Naj has a place where he goes and he brings children there
Mm-hmm.
that are just in the community, and they just come from all over, and he teaches them schooling. So we helped them, with their letters and with their words and things like that. Plus, we also had Bible stories, and we sung and danced around and had a lot of fun with them.
Mm-hmm.
And then they're served a meal. And then we also went in the red light district. And I'd never been to a red light district, and that was an eye-opener for me. And I think by the third time I did my trip to India, it just, I don't know, it was just life-changing for me every time I went. The first time I went, I was just blown away,
Mm-hmm.
When I got over there. And I thought, how am I going to respond to these people? How do I talk? How do I do? Because I can't speak their language.
Mm-hmm.
But I was trying to do everything, I think, myself, and I needed God, there, tell me what to do, not to try to do it on my own, but to tell me what to do and show me what to do, and he did.
Mm-hmm.
And so as I did these things, I felt at peace. I felt like that God was, there by my side,
Mm-hmm.
and he was giving me the words to say. And when we went to the red light district, I didn't know what to expect when I went there. And Kevin had mentioned the red light district, and I didn't know about that at first. But then I am so thankful, Kevin, that you took us to the red light district,
Mm-hmm. because
that was a big eye-opener for me. I just think it just shows me what God expects of us. He, as he says, go to the end of the world
Mm-hmm.
and preach the gospel. I felt then I really knew, since I've been to India, what he was really saying.
Mm-hmm.
And I know I'd been on mission trips before, but it was just like it hit home to me in these places because I saw so much need there.
Mm-hmm.
So I think the children, I think I connect with them a lot. And it really was special when we started to leave. The last time we was over there, we'd worked with the children and teaching them and playing with them and doing all this stuff. And when we left, our bus was leaving, And as we pulled off, they followed and ran behind the bus, waving and telling us bye. So it's making the connection with them. And we told Bible stories and things like that, but we also had fun with them and played with them. And I think that's important because you need to get them to realize that you're over there loving on them and caring for them, and you want to help them all you can.
Yeah.
And I think they realize that. And so they respond back to you. And in the red light district, it just sort of bothered me that how can they get out of there if they're, and that has been on my mind a lot. How can they get out? I know it's hard because once they get there, it's very hard. And we saw some in there that what they do is they just put them on so many drugs and things that they're just like zombies. And they get them under the drugs so much that they get them hooked. And so there they are. And so that has been on my mind a whole lot since I saw that. I know a lot of people maybe have said, why don't you just send your money and not go? But then it was after I went on my third trip, I told Jim, I said, I think God has answered that question for me. I have been 3 times, and I have seen the love between me and the children and even the adults and the girls. And I think what they need is another body, not just money, but I think they need a body there to show them that you care for them and that you will come all that way and that you care about them and let them know that God cares about them. And then that way, you're making that connection with them. And if you just send money, they don't have anything warm, to connect with them.
Yeah.
And I think that's just one of the things that I feel like that I've really experienced from these 3 trips.
Very well said. Jim, do you remember the year that you first went?
Probably about 2012 or 13.
All right. So since 2012, let's say 2013, 6 years later, in 6 years, you've gone 3 times.
Yes.
Yeah. So, Jim, I know that you really appreciate being able to tell the stories. What are some of your favorite stories that you remember since you've come back and shared with your friends at church about what you experienced in India? What has impacted you?
Well, before we ever went, Chris would talk to us about it, and we decided we was going to go. And Mary and I asked him, said, well, just tell us what it's like, what it's all about. He said, I can't. He says, I can tell you how it affects me, but he says, you don't know till you go and feel it yourself. That's just what Mary said. But one of the things that strikes me so much about India is their eagerness to learn the Word of God. And if Christians in America had half the zeal that the Christians in India had, we wouldn't be having all the problems we have in America, and things would be so much greater. But
very true.
One of the trips it was on, I believe it was the second trip, we were speaking to some Bible students, and what amazed me, you could give a scripture reference in the Bible, and before you could get the last word out of your mouth, some of those people could have that scripture looked up so fast. And realizing these people had just been Christians just a few years. I've been a Christian basically all of my life. And sometimes I have trouble finding it. And hear some of the stories that they would tell after they had gone out and planted a church, how they would be abused, how their families would neglect them and throw them out, and how they'd be beaten and just all sorts of things. And you stop and think about that. We don't face that in America. I guess one of the things that really, this was probably on our second trip, was listening at one of our banquets one night. Sergeant John got up and he spoke. He said, God knows every name of every person in India. But he says, very few of those people in India know Jesus. That's stuck with me. That's so true. And unless we go, unless we sin, people are not going to learn about Jesus.
Yeah.
And it's just a joy to be there. And the children we've worked with are so well behaved. It's just amazing the love that you see, the least little thing you can do for them, not only the children but the adults. it's so much appreciated. And when you're only there for 5 or 7 days, you can only do so much. There's just so much to be done and so little time to do it in.
It really humbles me to hear how God has given you such a burden for the beautiful people of India, and such a joy as you've seen God transform them and even change your life through missions. Let's share with our audience some of your funniest stories. What are some of the things that you remember that you've laughed at since you've come back from India?
Well, it's not really a funny story, but the person that went with us to India this last time, he was a little bit older than us, and he never really worked around children that much. And he was so touched by the children and how they just gravitated toward him, you know, and it changed him. We've known him for practically all of our life. Fine Christian man.
Yeah.
But it was just amazing to see the effect that it had on him. And you don't know all this unless you go see for yourself and experience it.
When Chris joined the board, I had no idea that I'd get to go on a mission trip with Jim and Mary Ayers. I had no idea of the connection of Jim's sister Linda and how their mom had been so gracious to me and my siblings. But another highlight since then is just getting to take a whole team from Rutherford County, North Carolina. What was that like? It's one thing when you get to go on a mission trip. It's another thing to go on a mission trip with people that you would never expect necessarily to see in India. And all of a sudden you turn around in that moment on a mission trip and you're like, wow, they are in India. You took Roxanne and Jerry and some beautiful friends. Tell us about that trip.
Okay, that was a very special trip. Roxanne, like you were saying, Roxanne, before we went, and while we were over there, and after we came home, you could have tied a balloon to her, and I think she could have flown back to the U.S.
Very
she
true.
was just so excited, and she just wasn't ready to leave. And I think Roxanne would like to go back if the opportunity comes up for her to go.
Yeah.
I know Jerry was out of his comfort zone, and because he told us, he said, I always do work on things. I'm not comfortable with children, things like that. But then he came out of that. And Jerry has a very strong testimony for India now. And then Sheila, she was really thrilled to be with there, and she got a blessing. They have all told us, they said, we have heard you talk about India. But they said, we had no idea it was what it was like until we got to go over. And so they were just so happy that the opportunity came for us to go with us over there.
Yeah. I just want us to give honor to the Lord, because here in the U.S., we're blessed to see multiple generations. And yes, there are definitely grandparents in India, but because of the difficulty that they face in life, they're a very young population compared to the U.S. Like the U.S. baby boomer population is enormous compared to that in India. We don't see the retirement villages in India like we do in the U.S. What sovereignty of God to send a team, a short-term mission trip team of grandparents over to India to work among the children and just get to be a grandparent, a grandma, a grandfather. This whole team from Rutherford County was one of the most effective child evangelism teams in the history of Global Hope India, and it was just out of that nature of a grandparent's love for the children, and then to show that to the strangers of India in the name of Christ. What a highlight that was. Mary, you love your grandkids, both you and Jim. You love your grandkids so much. What's it like to hold an orphan, and not just one, but 40 orphans around your arms, and to dance through a village with the orphans? I've seen you just come alive when a lot of senior citizens might feel like they just want to take a nap. You would just come alive. What makes you go thousands of miles away on a short-term mission trip to just pour Jesus' love into the orphans of India?
Well, I want those children to have an opportunity, and even the older people, to know Jesus. And when I'm around the children, I just can't help but get excited. And the second trip we were on, I know the children in his orphanages, they called me grandma. while we were there, and they called Jim Grandpa while they were there. So we got so attached to them. They were running around, Grandma, and all like this. And it's just so good to have all those children around you, know that they're experiencing a love from somebody that's so far away. And we tell them that we love them so much that we came, to tell them about Jesus. And it's not that we're coming and giving them lots of things, but we're just giving them love and making them smile and laugh. And I know we were at one place, and we were able to give them pizzas. Our last night we were there. And when we did that, you could just see the children. They were just so happy. Like Jim said, you could just see the slava running down one of the boys' mouth. And, I mean, it's just a joy, because you can give them a piece of paper and a pack and some crayons, and they're so happy to make crafts and do things. But in the States, you don't have that. If they do it, they might go out and throw it in the trash can. But these children will hold on to it so tight. And they're so proud of it. So I don't know, it just breaks my heart to see. When I was in the red light district, I saw one little boy there, and he was about 2. And I can't get him off my mind, because I'm thinking, here he is the rest of his life probably in here. And he was wearing just a little string around him. And that was supposedly they said, to ward off the eagles. And he was sitting in a water puddle playing. And I thought, that is all he has, is that water puddle to play in. He has no toys. He has nothing. And that has just been on my mind a lot. And I think, how can you fix this? And we know we can't without God's help and without people praying and people going. I think anybody that can go, I think it would be wonderful to go. But if they can't, if they can just send their money, and through Global Hope India, that is a good way to send your money, because I know your organization, you don't have a big overhead. Most all the money goes to India. Very little, because you don't have a big staff. You don't have a lot that you have to pay out like some of these other places. And so I just can't say enough about Global Hope India and the way they handle the things for India, and they're always doing things to raise money for India and help them in such a way, like for water and things like that, when they don't have water or anything. It's just a blessing.
I appreciate you saying that, Mary. It means a lot. Jim, the trauma at times to leave India. You're in a sea of need, and it's endless. And you've got to come back to a privileged society that we know of, how blessed we are to live in the USA. But you leave them in the hands of God, and you pray for them, and you continue to pray, you continue to give, and you go when the Lord allows you to go. How do you deal with that as you leave India and you come back? How have you learned to put that kind of faith in the Lord, to just leave them in His hands?
Well, you have to just turn it over to God and support them in any way that you can, financially, prayerfully, or like you say, going every chance you get. And one thing that I think holds true anywhere, if you reach the people while they're young, like the children, get them there, they're going to build it. That's where you're going to spread the gospel. If you reach the children, they're going to have their whole life to spread the gospel there. And I know you reach some of the adults too, but how much their life has been without Christ, But if you get these children while they're young, get Christ in their lives, they're going to have it the rest of their life. And that's what I think about a lot,
I just love your example, because you are the epitome of simple America. You're not rich, you're not poor, you're not 105, but you're not 15 either. And you've had a good life, and God has really blessed you. But you could make a lot of excuses. Why not to go? Why not to give? Why not to pray? But you realize that you have been shown such grace and such love, and it demands a response. And there are people like our friends in India that are facing a Christless eternity, as Jim said earlier, if we do not go, if we do not tell, if we do not show them love, then who's going to?
Hope will
And now imagine yourself on the forward mission field. You and your team are on the bus going to today's programs. After singing a few songs, Pastor Kevin stands to deliver a devotion.
Okay, team, gather around. Before we go out into today's program, I have a word I want to share with you. Today's word is unity. I want you to hear that word, unity. Let the Holy Spirit just speak that word into your spirit. Unity. Unity is so important. We all know the Lord's Prayer, and hopefully you have it memorized, and that is beautiful. But equally important is Jesus' prayer in John 17. There he prays that the believers would be protected, that they would be sanctified. Now that's a big word that basically means set apart for the glory of God. And he prays that they might be one, that they would be united. He is praying for you and I that we would protect each other, that we will exhort and encourage each other to live set apart for the glory of God, because he knows that those are what is required in order for you and I to be united together. Can you imagine wanting to avoid a family or a group in your school that is always in conflict? We know various families that we have been exposed to that are always in conflict. Nobody wants to go to that home. No one wants to be a part of that club if all they have in that club in the school or that department in the company where all they are is having conflict and drama with each other. It's the same in the world. God knows that it is unity that makes the gospel contagious and gives the church an attractive witness. And so it is important that you and I go out into today's mission ready, willing, able, already deciding up front that we will protect one another. We will share the same focus as being set apart for the glory of God, and that we will value unity. We will not allow the enemy to distract us through interpersonal conflicts or conflicts of any type. We know unity is not an option. And so value this word, treasure this word, treasure the gift of unity. Ask God for unity. As you pray, along with what Jesus has prayed, you can be confident it is God's will to answer that prayer of protection, of sanctification, of unity. Keep in mind the word unity. Pray that into existence throughout today's program. Be committed to unity. Are you ready? Let's get set, ready, go.
Global Hope India empowers the church in India through multiple channels. One of the most influential methods has proven to be sending individuals on short-term trips to India. During your 10 days in India, you will make a difference, be the hands and feet of Jesus, and see the lives of Indian internationals transformed by the gospel. We have opportunities in children's ministry, women's ministry, job training, medical missions, and more. Experience a life-changing adventure. If you're looking to make an impact, India is the place, and GHI is the opportunity. See our trips at globalhopeindia.org/go.
We want to give some local love to the IT gurus at Wingswept in Raleigh, North Carolina. Wingswept is a B2B technology services company that focuses on leveraging technology to meet your business objectives. Not only do they love to maximize your technology ROI, but their founders, Jay and April Strickland, invest a portion of their profits for gospel expansion ministry. We recognize them for their witness for Christ and their corporate practice of generosity. Check out their website today at wingswept.com.
As we close out this episode, let's talk to that brother and sister in Christ that is beginning to hear the call of God having a plan for their life, like I did whenever I was a small boy. and like you have, of just needing to go, to put to be that body as Mary talked about, to put skin on it and allow not only to ask Jesus into our heart, but to give him our feet and be willing to get on a plane and go to the other side of the world in order to make Christ known, to give him our hands to hug an orphan, to give him our teaching ability. Mary has taught a lot in our programs in India, and Jim has also taught a lot and had a lot of practical involvement in projects as well. What would you say to our brothers and sisters around the world about how God can use missions to change their life?
First of all, I would say let God, talk to God and let God control you. And if he's leading you to go, go. Don't say I can't. Don't put it off. Go. And I guarantee if you're listening to God and you go, one time's not going to do it. You're going to want to go back. And for those that want to go but can't go, whether it's whatever the reason is, you can pray and you can help other people to go. And like Mary said, Global Hope India is one of the best organizations, I think, in the world does this.
J.D. Greer at Summit Church has said it very well. We have three choices to the Great Commission. We can either go, we can send, or we can be disobedient.
Yeah.
And that's what you're talking about, Jim. Mary, what would you say to our brothers and sisters in Christ about going on an international mission trip?
Well, I think that is one of the greatest opportunities they ever have in their lifetime. And I think that, like I say, they should pray to God. And if it's not meant for them to go, then to give and to pray. But if there's any way that you can go on a mission trip to India, I know you will be blessed. And you will the days will go by so fast there. And you hear a lot about India, going into India, but I did not have any fear of going into India. I think when I felt God calling, Chris had asked us a couple of times before we went to go, and we just said no. And then about the third time he asked us, we just felt that, we needed to go, that God was telling us to go. But I was sort of scared because I thought, I don't know what to do over there. And so I thought they can't, my language and things like that, and I don't know how to respond to those people. But when I get over there, God gives me that peace, and I have no fear. I know you have to be cautious, and India is a place that you have to be real careful, but I did not ever feel that I was in jeopardy or anything over there because through Global Hope, the people, if you go through them, they always have everything planned out so much for you, and there is safety, and they're doing their very best to see that there's safety all the time, and you will not be in jeopardy. And so go, and it will change your life. I mean, it has changed me, and it will be an experience that you will never, ever forget.
We have a high priority on safety. And a high priority in just minimizing distractions to just help our teams really focus on the mission while they're there. And unfortunately, that is a big temptation that the enemy uses of just people's safety and the fears of going over to India. But you're great witness and examples that there's incredible peace in going. Have you ever felt like your life was going to be threatened because you were over in India?
No, I didn't. And, a lot of people say, you mean you're going over there? And, it's not safe. It's not safe over there. And I said, I think it is. If God, is calling me to go over there, I feel like he's going to take care of me. And so even the people that we work with, not just Global Hope, but the homes that we work in and things like that, those people are dedicated and they take care of you when you're with them. I mean, they're always seeing that you have safety over there. And so I have never felt insecure or anything over there. So I think, it's safe to go over there. Just be cautious and just turn things over to God, and he will take care of them. Because, as I said, he has commanded that we go and spread his word. And if we don't, then we're not obeying his command.
Well, Jim and Mary, thank you so much. Jim, you have any last words you want to add?
I would like to say that going to India Some people might think you're going on a vacation, but you're going on one of the most worshipful experiences you'll ever experience in your life. It's not a vacation. It's just like when we took a trip to Israel. We thought it was a vacation. First thing the pastor that led our trip says, it's not a vacation, it's a worshipful experience. That's the same way with the mission trip to India. You'll come back richly blessed.
Well, I love you both. Thank
Love
you
you.
for being my grandparents as well. And God bless you. And let's go to India soon.
Okay. Sounds good.
God bless.
Got a story for us? We've set up a dedicated phone line to record your story. Simply dial 95-MISSION-5. That's 95-MISSION-5. We are looking for the funniest mission story of all time. Do you have a funny story? We want to hear it. Call 95-MISSION-5 and leave your message. If we use your story on the show, we're going to send you a free Starbucks e-gift card. That's 95-MISSION-5. This episode is complete, so head over to globalhopeindia.org for show notes, resources, and opportunities to go to India through GHI. Continue to be radically transformed by God as you live out the Great Commission, and we'll see you again next week here at Missions Change My Life.